whole foods, like I said, almost exclusively. But then occasionally, we fall into situations where that may not be the case, right? So in one situation, it was my niece's birthday party, my nieces and nephew's birthday party, and I had some cake and ice cream, traditional cake and ice cream, right? I think it was like, well, actually, well, she made the cake herself, right? So, which is nice. But it was, pretty much there's nothing special about the cake, just use regular flour and sugar, as far as I know. And ice cream was like Friendly's ice cream. Just nothing, no keto or whole, whatever. It was very much your traditional cake and ice cream type of celebration. The other situation that I want to explore and see how I handled was one of my favorite foods all time. This is more of a nostalgic thing for me. We all have these nostalgic foods that we remember growing up and always hold a special place in our heart. And this is why food is more than just calories and whatever energy. Us humans, for better or worse, make social connection, well, not social connections, but like we have connections to foods because it brings back certain memories, right? So for me, my grandmother and my mother would always make like banana bread when I was a kid, and I loved having some banana bread when I was a kid. And so now as an adult, whenever one of my favorite indulgences is some banana bread, and I really like to make banana bread French toast out of it. But I had no idea how my blood sugar reacts to that. So that was the other thing. Like that's kind of like a rare indulgence for me. I have it maybe 4 or 5 times a year, right? And so I wanted to see how I handled that. And then the other one was just a pure like ultimate like I want to consume the most processed food out there and see how I do. Not because I enjoy it or have any special connection to it. I just wanted to really like stress test the system and see what happens, right? And so I chose Pop Tarts because, as my coach, Dr. Mike D. Nelson suggests, it's pretty much the equivalent of having a oral glucose tolerance test, where that's like straight up sugar. And two Pop Tarts is roughly like 75 grams of very processed food, right? And fun fact about Pop Tarts I didn't realize till like a year ago is that if you put Pop Tarts in the toaster oven, like most people do, um, the frosting never melts. That's how processed it is. um, so yeah, I don't enjoy Pop Tarts. I didn't enjoy Pop Tarts as a kid. I never really liked Pop Tarts, but that's like I think a gold standard when it comes to processed food. So I walked into the local gas station. No surprise, I could find some Pop Tarts pretty easily there, very cheaply, and bought a box of Pop Tarts and ate those one day. So without further ado, I'll show you what some of these experiments looked like from a blood sugar perspective. So here, let me just go back and share my screen. You can see it here. All right, so here's the levels app here. And so this was the birthday cake experiment. So you can see, you can probably tell where the birthday cake and ice cream was just by the spikes here. And you can see at 5:58 I had chicken, some veggies, and cake, ice cream, and I don't know why it says rice cake. I think that was a typo. That must have been a typo. Oh, I know I said rice cake because I did have a rice cake. Yeah, so I had cake, ice cream, and a rice cake because my daughter also made these cute little rice cakes. They had like faces, they had peanut butter and like some pretzels on it, and some cereal for the eyes or something like that. And she's like, "Oh, Dad, I made these. You can try them." And I said, "Oh, obviously, of course." Um, so I had a rice cake as well. So a cake, ice cream, and a rice cake. And yeah, so this is probably by far the worst blood sugar response I've had to date over the past month that I've had this on. So I peaked at number. Why does the number not show up there? Let's see. Get it here. So I peaked roughly about 57, which is pushing the limit, or it might be going a little bit higher. 150, 158, 159. I saw there 159. So that's pushing it. 160 is like, where I really don't really want to be a majority of the time. but it came back down, right? And that's this wasn't via exercise or anything like that. That was just I was sitting down having some cake and ice cream, ate the cake and ice cream, probably sat down after that. So it came back down, which is good to see, right? Like, not too fond of that peak, but again, I'm not having cake and ice cream every night. I'm having cake and ice cream when it's someone's birthday, um, and the rice cake, obviously. And it came back down. So within 2 hours, I was down roughly back to where I started, which is a pretty good response. But you can see what made this kind of worse overall for me was just like the subsequent spike, jump back down, and then spike back up. Um, so that was roughly around a spike back up around like 150 here, right? So, not the best response, right? Like I kind of have this double peak type of thing going on, and then I even had some smaller peaks going on for the rest of the evening before I even went to bed, which is kind of a roughly in yeah. So I was in bed at probably around 9 o'clock, and so I had some peaks after that. So not the best response, right? Obviously, it's cake and ice cream. Was it terrible? No. Was I sitting at 200 for hours on the end? No. But for me, I've seen much better responses. But it's cake and ice cream. It's not keto cake and ice cream. It's not, made of whole foods. I mean, cake and ice cream is cake and ice cream, but you can, try to make it a little bit better. So you know, for a traditional cake and ice cream kind of rice cake celebration, throwing the rice cake in there for extra bonus points, but not terrible. But could have been better for sure. And this is expected, right? I mean, you do this on occasion, like I said, you stress test the system. How does it respond under a large load of stress like this? And fairly well, but again, not the best thing in the world. So the next experiment I did was a few days later, and I believe that was the um, banana bread French toast. Yep. So here is my banana bread French toast experiment. So I had banana bread French toast in my breakfast. This banana bread again was not, keto or paleo. It was traditional banana bread that I actually bought from a restaurant that makes banana bread French toast that I really like this banana bread, and I just bought the loaf from them and sliced it up and made it at home. Um, but honestly, this is not bad. I obviously you don't see much of a spike here at all regarding the banana bread French toast. Even if we take the longer view here, you can see um, a couple hours later, I got up in close to 110, but that's where it peaked even just a few hours later. And so, not a terrible response at all from a blood glucose perspective to the banana bread French toast. You can see I had oatmeal did me in a little bit later on in the day, which is again was not terrible considering the amount of oatmeal that I ate there. But just banana bread French toast, no big whack for me, right? I mean, this is banana bread French toast, just normal banana bread, bananas on top, some maple syrup. I can't tell you carb count because I don't know, what the carbs are in the banana bread that I ate. But you know, a very good response for a food that's I would consider not a normal food, not something I would eat, certainly not a whole food by any means, and so not a terrible response from that. And actually, this spike here is probably actually not related to food at all. It might be my exercise because that's when I worked out. It's just not captured here. So yeah, that's pretty much the response from banana bread. Um, and then Pop Tarts. So Pop Tarts is right here. So Pop Tarts was this breakfast here. And that was what I got from Pop Tarts. Came up a little bit towards the end here, around 117. We take the larger view. Even after that, it was captured. I did spike a little bit later, maybe a bit of a delayed spike, probably due to just eating the rest of the food, but it only peaked up at 117, which nothing. Like that's completely fine. A little bit of a drop here afterwards. Again, not terribly concerned about this because I see this a lot and I don't feel like I have like a drop in blood glucose, like I'm gonna faint or pass out or anything like that. My cognition and everything is normal, so I'm not terribly worried about that. Maybe just a little overcorrection from the insulin. But overall, a very mild spike in response to what's extremely highly processed food. Probably one of the worst case scenarios as far as like eating food. And yeah, so the lesson here is basically like, you want to see what how you respond to the foods that you eat normally throughout the day on a day-to-day basis. That's a good thing to do. But also, like, what happens when you stress the system, right? What happens like when you put the system under a large amount of stress? Does it crash and burn, or is it resilient enough to handle that stress and buffer it, right? Maybe if you did this stress, if I ate Pop Tarts day in, day out for 3 meals a day, yeah, that wouldn't be good. My system eventually would not be able to handle that. It would be probably a bad idea. Um, but if you occasionally have a Pop Tart or the equivalent, the cake and ice cream or the banana bread French toast or whatever the food is for you, that's probably outside of your normal diet. How does the system handle that? Right? And that's what we're trying to figure out here, right? Again, it's not just can I handle my low carb meal day in, day out if I only eat 50 grams of carbs every day. And yeah, I hope that your blood sugar stays very stable. That's a good thing. Great. But what happens when you throw more at the system? Do things outside of the ordinary. How does the system respond, right? We don't want you to crash and burn. We want you to be resilient. We want you to be able to buffer that stress. Not because I want you to be that give you permission to do it day in and day out, but because this is life. You're going to eat these foods. Like you can't. Most people are not going to live in a bubble where they never have a slice of cake and ice cream, or eat the rice cake that their daughter made for them, or or something like that, right? Like you're gonna eat these foods. It's gonna happen. It's okay, but can your system handle it? And if not, what can we do to better mitigate that stress when it does happen, right? Um, Sometimes you're going to see those spikes, like I did with the cake and ice cream. It's going to go a little higher than I want it to be. Okay, but does it really peak and stay that high for a long, long period of time? That's what we're worried about. That's where the long-term problem is. And if that happens, on occasion, no big deal. You probably can handle it. It's probably okay. Maybe I have minutes off my life, which I'm okay with doing, just celebrate with my family and have these special moments, whatever. But do you physically feel okay? Can you handle that? Can you come back to it the next day and be okay, right? Like that's what we want to test in these scenarios, right? And this is where some interesting data is. So overall, I think my resiliency for me, my metabolic health shows that it's very good by handling these bouts of stress. Um, and but that's this week's learning. I wanted to give everyone a takeaway of just stress test the system. We're going to have these special occasions. What happens when you do have these special occasions, and how do you respond and go from there? And it's not only important to test, what it's like under everyday conditions, but also what is it like when you give that system a huge amount of load. In this case, a huge amount of like processed high carb foods, high sugar, those types of things, right? Um, can you handle that, right? And a healthy metabolism, a healthy person can. You'll see stuff like what I just showed you. Um, will it be that good? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe everyone has a different response to different things. You might respond even better to Pop Tarts than I did. I don't know, right? You might handle cake and ice cream much better than I do, right? Maybe, right? But find where your limits are and what that looks like, because that's also a sign of a healthy metabolism. Not just if I eat low carb, I can stay great, like in my range, good. That's great. I want you to be in your range in a solid range all the time as much as possible. I also think it's okay if you throw a huge load at the system and it can't handle that. That's not a sign of being healthy, right? You have some work to do, in my opinion. So I just want to get that message across. I know this video is going long, so I'll stop there. But if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Happy to answer. I'm happy to try out other things if people want me to experiment with different situations and stuff like that. Please leave me your ideas. I'm happy to do that. And if you're interested in getting all these videos emailed directly to you, as well as my blog posts and other content that I put out, please go to my website, rjbhealth.coach, sign up for the newsletter. You'll see at the top, there's a link that says newsletter. Click that, enter your email address. You'll be signed up for the newsletter. It's the best way to keep on track or keep up to date with what I'm putting out. And if you're interested in one-on-one coaching, please let me know. Again, you can direct message me, or the best thing to do is go to my website, rjbhealth.coach. Right on the homepage is a schedule discovery call button. Click that link, and fill out the form, and I will get back to you, and we could talk about doing some coaching if you'd like. With that, I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I will talk to you all next week.